Hey everybody, Ruben here, our weekly live cast, a special edition. We've got multiple setups here and Jason's here again. And we're going to be talking about daily and monthly metrics, right?
Yeah, it's exactly the topic for today.
Very cool. So, actually I'm going to be in Bradenton today with a practice owner, a chiropractor. And one of the first things that she brought up to me over the phone was she's struggling with how to make sure that when she's tracking her daily metrics, that she still has time to treat her patients. In other words, she feels like she has to do one or the other.
It's a struggle everyone comes down with. That's not unique. When a practice owner starts a business, they know exactly what their vision is, right? High volume. I'm going to help a whole bunch of people. They're going to bring their families in,
Sure.
right? No matter how they're paying, whether it's going to be cash or insurance, my staff's going to know exactly what to do. And at the end of the day, all my co-pays are going to be in this pile, and we are reconciled with what's posted in the system. I'm going to take it to the bank. All my claims are going to go out. Not a problem. All my notes are going to be done, and I'm going to get to go home to my dog, my family, my hobby, and it's all going to work, right?
Right.
That's the utopia, the ideal situation we want everyone to fall into.
Sure.
But that requires a lot of management, right? Because the collections at the end of the month add up to what you're looking for. Means that 5 days a week when your practice is open, that every single step for every single patient had to fall into line, right? Making sure you're 100% compliant, which is a goal I've talked to most practice owners now. It means that you had to make sure that the note matched the visit, which matched the bill.
Right.
And the financial commitments made to both the insurance company as well as the patient. And then you didn't miss any of those steps.
Right.
Right. And then there's the amount of time that you spent at the office, which frankly I don't hear most practice owners talk about, but I think we should. I think we should bring it up. That should be a goal.
Yeah.
That practice owners set for themselves. When the office is open for 5 hours today, I'm going to spend 8 hours today, and not a minute more. I'm going to budget my time so I can make my family commitment, my hobby, everything else I want to do to live this life.
Right.
The collections, the number of visits that you're gonna see, the number of patients that you're going to get, those are monthly metrics, right? But they're only dictated whether or not you spent the right amount of time, let's just say marketing, the right amount of time getting the billing, portion of your practice done, the right amount of time getting your staff trained to get the other things done that make the money come through the door. And so today we want to talk about the monthly goals that you set, and then the daily way you can go about setting goals with your staff, yourself, so that you can actually achieve those monthly, yearly, and overall goals that you set.
Well, it's kind of like health goals, right? You say you want to fit into a piece of clothing for a party, and that's a month away, but you need to set daily, or a wedding. Yeah. Can I bring up the fact, by the way, you're way too tall? Is there like a way I can?
No, you're small. That's just been the way it is since we've known each other.
All right. Well, this chair stinks. Nope, that's not going to
move. Not the chair.
It's not the chair. It's not. You're not helpful. All right. Somebody needs to bring me a new chair. Nobody. There's nobody here. There's nobody. I was talking with Dr. Pat, who works with a group called Physician Business Solutions in Atlanta. I was giving a talk, and one of the things that was brought up, this is specific, we were talking about medical billing, and we were talking about the fact that the practices, a lot of the practices they work with that are not yet transitioned to really electronic, or that have transitioned but to other systems.
Still using a lot of paper from what I heard.
Using a lot of papers, using a lot of aging reports, and not just on a monthly reporting level, right? Because that makes sense. Monthly, you want to make sure that your AR buckets are shrinking or staying consistently small, but they're saying that they work their claims from aging reports.
Oh, the overall goal you're talking about is making sure money comes through the door, right?
Right.
You turn in visits and the care that you're giving to patients into not only just money to support yourself, but money to grow the practice, right?
Sure.
But there's a distinction to be made. If that's all you've got, the only tool you have to get money through the door is to go look at an aging report.
Right.
Hopefully it's electronic.
Right.
Then that's all you've got, Ruben. That's what you're going to do.
Right.
We like to change the story on that, and we automate those things. So why don't we start with the overall collections goal first, and then break that one down into kind of the daily goals, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're going to make the distinction for all those practice owners out there who have a system that will automate the detection of, let's just say, an underpaid claim, a rejected claim, and then put them into a queue that somebody has to work. We call it a workbench. In our system, we refer to that queue of claims or things that need to be done very specifically. And you've got a collections goal, let's just say, of $40,000, right? $15,000, let's just say that is insurance, and maybe $25,000 is cash. You can very easily then say, I need to see this many patients. You can do the math backwards and say, I need, in order to hit that goal, 400 visits a week.
Right.
So out of the 1,600 visits I'm going to see in this particular month to hit my $40,000 goal, I know exactly how much I have to get paid for each visit, and I know how many claims I need to get paid. Now, the only big difference is let's just say you're looking at the month of July that we're in right now. The payments you're going to get could be from April, January, August of last year, if you get a lump check from some litigation that ended up, settling at this point.
Right.
And so we are looking at the law of averages right now. But at the end of the day, you make sure for your cash payments that you follow money.
Right.
So your daily goal is to have an even reconciliation. So every single day you need to know, where do I look to have that even reconciliation? Cash patients checked in, checked out.
So it's almost like having two different businesses in one practice, where you have your cash flow that's daily that you can reconcile, and then you have the cash flow really that is kind of lagging based on the submission date of the claim, which is actually really funny because I remember working with a client who struggled with this, who actually had a group working with them. And this isn't the first time that we've seen this, where either an accountant or somebody will come in who has no experience in this field and see how insurance claims don't get paid like cash claims do or cash visits do, and immediately call into question
competence,
efficacy, when until they actually look at examples of claims. It's eye-opening for a lot of people.
It is. We've had lots of conversations with accountants who will say, all right, you've got a State Farm claim not paid for 2 years.
Right.
What have you guys been doing on it? It's in an attorney's hands waiting for settlement to be reached. The patient's been treated, the patient's better, the patient's well. Fantastic. But the doctor worked for free at this point.
Right.
So you can't lose touch on that. There's three things that can happen when a claim gets paid. One, it gets paid.
Right.
Everyone's happy, right? No, everyone knows what to do in that situation. Cash the check. Right. The second thing is it can get rejected. Not ideal, but at least you know what to do.
It's almost like one of those situations where you want to make the recommendation. If you're a consultant, if you're a coach, I mean, this is something that I do. One of the things I'll say is when you're working, when you're trying to decide on who is going to handle your money, make sure that person either understands or preferably has worked in this field before, so that they understand that there is really two businesses going on at the same time.
Two businesses, and when you talk about that, right, the cash business versus the insurance business, I deal with a lot of practice owners who would rather treat for free than send someone to collections. Would rather treat for free than even send a statement out.
Well, it's almost more than just the fear of pissing off one of your patients by saying by sending them to collections. But I mean, more than that, you're going to lose that. You could lose that patient, lose the referrals from that patient. I mean,
the ripple effect
is huge.
Is considerable.
Why would I go back to a practice that sent me to collections after they pretended to take good care of me? Even though technically, as a patient, it's my fault.
Yeah,
I am responsible.
Every practice owner has to make up their own mind with how they want that to affect them. And I've heard a range of answers, but the predominant one is that one was service. That one I treated for free, and I love them, and I hope they feel better, and I hope they're going to tell others that, maybe they're not going to mention they didn't pay the bill, but I hope they're going to tell others that this happened. But when it comes to those consultants who are advising these practice owners, they like to they always have the best interest of the practice owner in mind, but maybe don't have a full understanding about why a 2-year-old, account isn't paid.
Right.
And I see that happen quite a bit. The whole point is when you have a queue, or we call it a workbench of claims to take care of, you have to make sure that queue, in order to hit your collections goal, is handled regularly. Right. We prefer daily.
Right.
If you stay on it daily, if you set a goal of hitting that queue to 0 or your workbench to 0, we like to use the term any backlog. And that backlog, I'll just kind of list my favorite daily ones. Unbilled visits.
Sure.
You don't leave the office. You set that 8-hour goal, but in that 8-hour goal of being at the office, you are not going to leave without an unbilled visit. You're not going to leave without an unsigned note. Right. I'm talking about the practitioner here. And you're not going to leave any note without a visit, period. Or any visit without a note. I said that backwards.
Right.
And so that's their job. If there's staff involved, you're not going to leave that workbench of claims until it's done. That's the rule. If you subscribe to that, it reduces the need to look at aging reports unless there's a problem.
Right. Unless there's like an issue with an entire payer or a patient. Yeah.
Those are great tools for diagnosing when a collections goal isn't met. But I like to help providers set those collection goals. Sometimes they're realistic, sometimes they're undershooting or overshooting where it is that they can be. If we take our hypothetical example, for instance, of 1,600 visits, you can do the math. 40,000 divided into 1,600, you know how much you need to be getting paid. Right. But if I discover that you're getting over or under that, then we need to either change the number of goals or the number of visits in your goal, or we can lower or raise your financial expectations. But we have to do it objectively.
Right.
A lot of practice owners get themselves into, all right, my malpractice insurance is this, my mortgage is this, my rent is this, I've got employee overhead and then utilities, I need to hit this number. Got to have that conversation, right? You got to start there.
Yeah.
And then you have to get the number of patients. But if you're not budgeting the time to get your notes done, if you're not budgeting the time to have staff do those daily things, like reconciliation of copay, making sure all your filled out, making sure your staff got all those things done at the end of the day, then you go into a tailspin and it's hard to recover from.
Well, you think about even just what we were talking about before with patients and collections. From a compliance standpoint, one important thing to mention is whatever you decide to do on a balance, you have to make a reasonable effort to collect the debt. You have to.
Reasonable. Let's define reasonable. There are precedents about what's reasonable, right? And none of them involve documenting a conversation you had with the patient. They involve some sort of record of sending them statements or making sure they got an email with, hey, here's what your balance is.
But even that needs to be checked. Even that needs to be looked at and said, you imagine, the biggest fear that practices have is I'm going to get audited. And they don't realize that every practice is going to get audited.
We recommend automating that process as well. So the system will either automatically send out a paper statement, make a note of it. We have ample records, or automate the email being sent. We have that capability as well. And I recommend you guys have a system out there. Automate this. Now, wink, wink, I don't ever want to say anything on recorded, live, reproducible footage here.
It's fine, I'm not tall, so
that we're advising practices, but even if you have a policy that you don't like to go after patients, you have to let them know that your agreement with an insurance company requires you to demonstrate that you attempted to collect the home insurance co-payment.
Right.
I don't know how a practitioner who accepts insurance gets around that. And in fact, I'm not a compliance expert, but I would always suggest that you talk to them before you implement a policy about patient balances, especially when insurance is involved.
I think in general, when you're dealing with any metric that that you're going to have to worry about compliance with, it makes sense to speak with someone who's either been there or more preferably someone who actually does it for a living.
It makes sense.
It's almost like an incurred cost. But so if you're just joining us, this is our weekly live cast. We're talking about daily and monthly metrics. And Barnes, talking so far. We talked about a few practice examples and compliance, patient collections. We talked about unbilled visits. We talked about aging reports, daily versus monthly, checking those, and how just terrible it is to work an aging report every day. And I mean, these are horror stories that I hear from people.
You know what? We've got a lot of positive stories too. I'd like to share some of those with you right now. Practice, I love the stories of new practices, frankly. They're the ones I find most endearing. They don't have bad habits.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be one?
They come out of the gate,
right.
And you have certain practice owners who are just administratively, and then you have.
I've never had a before, so I would love some practice. Yeah, absolutely.
And so we got some great examples. One in California comes to mind. I was at a training seminar with this doctor as they were preparing to go to California about a year and a half ago, and now this doctor's collecting about $40,000 a month. And what he does is he sets business goals, he sets financial goals, and then he backtracks from those. I need X number of new patients a month. I need to retain this percentage of patients, which means he looks at his no-shows, and any patient that walks out of his office in a no-show point scenario, it's unacceptable to him. So we actually set him up a chart on his homepage that he's able to look at every minute of every day, and it updates him. Where am I at? Where am I at in the month? Oh my gosh, I've got 31 no-shows. I'm in my last week. I got 1,800 visits. I'll take 31 no-shows. He does the math. It's not in the red yet, and it actually gauges how he's doing, right there in real time, and tells him whether or not he's teetering on the brink of not hitting his goal, right? Same thing with visits, same thing with any patient that left him without a future appointment. But it also tells him at a glance which visits he didn't fill out. So if he's at 3 or 4, he knows he has a tough PI case. Right, that's the one that's still sitting out there. I've got to go take care of that one. Fantastic. That happens, right? You've got a special situation where a letter needs to be written to an attorney. That sort of thing happens. I don't want to say absolutely there's no doctor that should ever leave the office with an unbilled visit.
Right.
I'd love to say that, actually.
It'll never happen.
And so he's able to look at his overall goal. We worked out together what his daily and month-to-date goals need to look like. And then at a glance, he's able to manage them every day. Same thing with his front desk. They can see whether or not the task workbench and the claims workbench, which we were speaking about before, if that's not hitting zero regularly, or that's backing up on them, they see it, and it starts to be an eyesore. And they condition themselves to say, nope, my chart's going to look good every single day. The doctor's going to see it. I'm going to see the doctor. We're going to know we're hitting on all cylinders.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So what do we want to talk about next with daily and monthly metrics? I mean, we talked about aging reports. We talked about compliance with patient bills. When we're talking about collections, right? So let's just run down quick. Bottom line revenue. Should I be looking at that daily, monthly, weekly? I mean, when should I be looking at that number?
Our recommendation is to set up a chart, some sort of indicator that tells you when you're straying from your goal. So I don't care until day 3. By day 3, you should be, at 3 out of 30, right? Assuming 30 days in a month.
Right.
You should be at 3 out of 30 toward that goal. Why not glance at it and say, 3 days in the month, I'm already off.
Right.
I already have, to play a pickup game. But then it prompts the doctor 3 days into the month, why am I off?
Right.
And we then have the tools, just like we were talking about with an aging report, where you said, well, maybe it's higher, right? Maybe Blue Cross Blue Shield claims just aren't getting through. Or you see a workbench of claims starting to pile up. And staff has 3 days in the month. They haven't escalated to you what's happening. So if you're looking at it regularly, prefer daily, because if something's wrong, it's going to keep getting worse. And very early on, you have the ability to open a task with somebody, go to the conversation, and figure out why. Most of our clients, and when I mean most, over 95%, use us as a billing company as well. So what we do is, if we see a problem, we bring it to them. We're looking at it regularly. Or if they bring it to us, we now then can collaborate and take some of that diagnostic pressure off of the practice owner. If you wait, and I'm going to go back to a horror story. If you wait months to do this, to reconcile your copays, to reconcile your insurance payments, where we posted that you got $50,000, but in your bank account you've got 12.
Right.
It's too late. You're already backed up on payroll. You've already missed a mortgage payment.
Right.
Why get into that situation?
Right. So it's almost like a question of, should I manage proactively or should I manage by fire? And obviously, I mean, given the option, we don't want to manage by fire. And the question is, how do we do that? How do we manage proactively without feeling inundated with reports and having to be, I mean, we have a client out in Colorado who loves and would actually like more reports.
Loves numbers. I know who you're talking about.
She would like even more. I mean, I think I was out there back in February, and I think she said on camera that if she could have 100 more reports, she would be even happier. And I mean, granted, most people are not like that.
They're not. And frankly,
but that's not something
she's not human.
She's not
fair enough to say.
Superhuman.
She's not human.
Superhuman.
And for the rest of us, mere mortals,
right.
And I'll put myself square into that category of being fallible. We need to have indicators, right?
Yeah.
Memory managing a practice, especially if we're talking about the modern practice where you're under fire from insurance companies. Patients are getting a lot of negative information about new forms of healthcare that are having them question whether or not they should be under a total wellness program. And so you have to be able to spend more time with those patients and less time looking at reports.
Right.
And more time marketing in those areas where you can get those new patients pulled away from less effective forms of treating them.
I mean, you think about keeping patients, right? And the big thing, I mean, last weekend when I was in Atlanta, that was the big thing we were talking about. It was, if I have to use an EMR, right? In the days of paper, I would sit like this. And this is, I mean, when I was working in clinic at the New Brunswick Counseling Center, this was something we had. I had a pad of paper.
Yeah.
I had a patient in front of me, and we were just talking, and I would take notes. And today, for people, it feels in a lot of systems like this. I'm sitting and I'm taking notes, and
you're no longer engaged, right?
Yeah, there's no engagement because I have to, by law, complete my documentation within like 24 hours. So, the ability to quickly do that becomes imperative so that you can spend the time.
That's a topic for a different day because now you're talking about patient visit efficiency, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes.
It's a big topic and one we should probably spend an entire session on because the ability to document quickly and really it goes along with collections because if you're not able to capture charges accurately and effectively, with the right diagnosis codes to get on a form that match exactly what you did in the visit, you're in hot water.
Right. I mean, it's one of the things that I talk about in my book, and one of the things that, I mean, I've heard over and over again is that in order to build a successful practice, I need to be able to proactively manage my metrics every day. And I need to build a community of patients, which means spending as little time looking at the computer as possible. While at the same time, make sure that I cover all of my bases on the computer.
Well, that's why we talk about graph things. Everyone responds to the picture, right? For us, a report requires dedicated focus.
Right.
To look at the subset of data or numbers that you're looking at, understand the time frame that it's affecting, and then figure out where it's going wrong. If we preset what your monthly and daily goals should be and put it in a picture that, red equals bad, green equals good, anybody with glance can say, I'm in the green zone.
Right.
Stay the course. No need for course correction right now. But course correction hits you pretty squarely in the face when you see, hey, I'm in the red zone right now. Let's figure out where. It doesn't take me long because at a glance I can figure out where it is. That's why we use those pictures with practice owners. They sound a little rudimentary, and I'm certainly not talking on practice owners, but I've never talked to a group of people juggling more balls at one time ever than these practice owners in this day and age.
Well, I think that's a good way to sum it up. I mean, when you look at how you treat a patient, one of the most powerful ways to show them how they've changed over time, especially in wellness care, but in any kind of care, is the picture. I mean, whether you're getting, ideally not surgery, but even if you did, the before and after, you separate your shoulder, you get a surgery there to see that everything looks like the other one. I mean, all of that, the ability to see that change over time, and even in our system where you can actually just pictorially show an improvement, it's huge.
Well, the month within a month picture is important, and then the trending. So today was daily versus monthly, but monthly you want to see that things are going up and to the right.
Year over year, yeah.
And we have that ability, but I would say even more specifically, it's the daily beat where the magic happens.
Right.
It's the daily where your staff develops habits.
Right.
And if you let somebody go off course, you take off from in an airplane from New York City, going to LA, and you're off by 2 degrees, you end up in Canada.
Right.
Or Mexico.
Right. Yeah, it's a famous one. Tony Robbins talks about that all the time. The idea that literally if you leave from New York and you try to go to California, 2 degrees off, you end up in Hawaii.
There was a pilot named Dino F. Dorf who actually did that. And,
Good.
Well,
yeah.
Where he worked for Lufthansa and saw that actually he wasn't the one who did it. He was one of the pilots who said, "Hey,
I think we're off."
Without great, the ability to check your course during flight, you don't know. And they didn't have the tools. You need to push to get those tools so you can check while you're over, the traveling space that you've stayed on course.
Proactive measurement.
That's what we're doing here.
Proactive measurement. All right. So for everybody watching today, daily metrics. So make sure that if you haven't already, you want to check out Treat or Be Treated online. It's coming to Amazon and Barnes & Noble soon. Next week, we're on hiatus, beginning the month of August. I think almost everybody on our side is going to be traveling somewhere. So you'll see us either at a conference, at a practice somewhere. And we'll pick it up for August. We've got very cool special guests coming in. We've got John Murdoch, who is an attorney in New Jersey. We'll be talking about HIPAA and fraud, so if either of those things scare you even a little bit, make sure you come to that. And so we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks. Any questions that came through today in Twitter? I'm sorry if we didn't get them today. This topic, and you would take most of the time, but I'll make sure that I send you guys replies right away. Everybody have a great day.